Type 1 diabetes has been known for centuries. Diabetes literally means peeing too much. And in the old days, before they could test how much sugar you had, when somebody came into the doctor and was peeing too much, the doctor would taste the finger that they dip it in the urine, taste the urine and go, your urine is sweet. Therefore, you have diabetes mellitus. The word mellitus refers to mel, which is honey. So you have honey flavored urine.
Dr. Saunders, do you still test this way?
Not very often.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Fix Blood Sugar webinar. You are joining us here, Leslie Prinz, Dr. Scott Saunders. We are so excited you guys are here. We are on each week talking about all things type 2. And today we're going to be talking about the basics of type 2, as well as taking your questions like we do each week. I'm going to give a quick disclaimer here. I'm going to give one this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is for you guys. And the disclaimer is just that Dr. Saunders is not your personal doctor. And so anything that's discussed here, chat with your own doctor about those things. So with that, we are going to jump right into it because we've been getting so many questions on the webinar that we run out of time to get through them all. So one thing that I want to do today, I've gotten a couple emails about this, is just quickly go over the difference between type 1 and type 2, because what we're finding is that people sometimes are not even sure what they have. They just know they have diabetes. And so Dr. Saunders really has shared with us that it's very important to know what's happening in your body when you're diagnosed with something. So let's start there, Dr. Saunders. Talk to us about what is happening in our body with type 1 and type 2.
Okay. So it's really unfortunate that there are the same name for two different illnesses, because they are not the same illness. Yes, they both affect blood sugar, but that's where the similarities part ways. Because they are really, really different illnesses. So let's talk about the difference between them. Type 1 diabetes has been known for centuries. Diabetes literally means peeing too much. And in the old days, before they could test how much sugar you had, when somebody came into the doctor and was peeing too much, the doctor would taste the finger that they dip it in the urine, taste the urine and go, your urine is sweet. Therefore, you have diabetes mellitus. The word mellitus refers to mel, which is honey. So you have honey flavored urine.
Dr. Saunders, do you still test this way?
Not very often.
Okay. Just checking.
And if they taste it and they say your urine is bland, it's called diabetes insipidus because it's insipid, which means bland. And those were the two different types of diabetes known for many, many years, thousands of years. And there's actually records of ancient Rome and Babylon where they have the doctors have written in clay tablets that this person had a sweet, was peeing a lot and had sweet urine. So diabetes has been known for many years, and type 1 diabetes happens when the pancreas doesn't make enough insulin. Insulin is the hormone that is required. Without insulin, you cannot get sugar in through the cell membrane into the cell. The cell happens to need sugar to create energy and everything and do all the cell needs to do. But the sugar can't get in there unless there's insulin to open a door, unlock it, and let the sugar in. And that's the only way it's going to get in. So when you don't have insulin, guess what? The cells get no sugar at all. They get no energy at all. And so what happens is they shrink down and they die. So what do people die of when they have diabetes? Type 1. They die of starvation. You can eat as much as you want, and you're just going to pee. They can die of ketoacidosis and other things, but if they don't die from an acute like ketoacidosis, then they die, they gradually waste away, and they would call it the consumption, because it would consume your body and you would just like waste away and waste away because the cells are dying because they can't get any energy into the cell. There's no energy can cross that membrane. So when insulin was discovered in the 1920s, it was a miracle. These people with diabetes, you can get an injection of insulin, and it was like, wow, they could get energy into their cells all of a sudden, and they would gain weight, and they could be strong and live a normal life again. It was miraculous. But then came along another type of diabetes that wasn't really well understood. And since they didn't have a lot of testing to know what was going on, all they knew is that these people are peeing too much as well. They have an awful lot of urine, and it's sweet. Yep, tastes sweet. So you have diabetes mellitus, and so they were both called diabetes because of that. Well, actually, they are very different illnesses, because when they started testing and going, oh, these people with diabetes have high insulin. Their pancreas is putting out a whole bunch of insulin, but they're resistant to it. It doesn't work. Yeah, they got insulin, but it's not working. And so it was completely opposite from type 1, where their pancreas is not making any insulin. Now they have a disease that also has a lot of sugar in the urine, but they're making too much insulin and it's not working. So the question is, why isn't it working? Well, because the cells, when you eat a lot of sugar and you're eating and eating and eating sugar, and especially if you have fat with that sugar, then your cells are building up all of this glycogen in them, which is the sugars being made into this starch, this glycogen. And it has too much energy in it. So the cell, the nucleus of the cell just says, okay, we're done. We don't need sugar anymore. So we're not going to make any more insulin receptors that bring sugar into the cell. So they stop making insulin receptors. So now you have this cell all the way around. The insulin comes along and says, nothing there. And so now the sugar's going up because the sugar can't get into the cell anymore. So your blood sugar, you eat sugar and it just goes up. Then you eat more sugar and it just goes up more because the cells aren't bringing it in. So that's the difference between type 1 and type 2. And so think about it like, wait a minute, your sugar's going up. So your pancreas is making more insulin and going, hey, wait a minute, that's what the pancreas does. It's just made to do that. So now you have a ton of insulin and a ton of sugar. And the question is, what do you do about that? Well, if you go to a regular doctor, a medical doctor, what they do is they don't even look at that. And that's not even an option. In fact, they won't even measure your insulin levels as a rule. Very few doctors will. I read an article a little while ago from an endocrinologist who said, I never measure insulin. It's a useless measurement. You just got to get the sugar down, whatever it takes. So what ends up happening is you go there and they say, what you need is more insulin so you can bring your blood sugar down. Well, is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. Your cells are still full of sugar, and it never does work. And so they get more insulin and more insulin, and then medications. What do the medications do? Well, most of them cause you to make more insulin. So it's really still all about insulin. And but you already have too much, and they're telling you you need more. That's the problem, because they're looking at type 2 as if it were type 1, and it's not. They're different illnesses. So that's why I say it's unfortunate that they have the same name, because they should have named it something else. And metabolic syndrome would have been a better idea. I don't know, instead of peeing too much, what is it? Hyperinsulinemia. That, if everybody said, yeah, you have too much insulin. Okay, wow. That would really describe what it is.
Right. And last week we actually talked about what we can now call type 3 diabetes. So, chat with us just real quickly about that, because if someone is interested in learning more about that, I would encourage you to go to bartonwebinar.com, click on our YouTube link to learn about this, because this is also really important. So what is happening with type 3?
Okay, so remember those cells are not making insulin receptors so that the sugar doesn't get in. Guess what? Your brain's doing the same thing, but the blood-brain barrier doesn't let sugar in either. And so the brain is starving. That's what type 3 is. The brain is starving in a sea of sugar. There's all this sugar all over the place, glucose everywhere, and nothing to use for energy because it can't cross the membrane without glucose transport proteins. And guess what? You're not making glucose transport proteins anymore because this blood sugar's been high for so long. That's insulin resistance. And that's why it's so important to understand the difference. Because if you know what your insulin level is, and it's supposed to be 5 on a fasting specimen, and it's 20 or 30, I've seen 60 or 100, then and you go in and the doctor says you need more insulin, you go, wait a minute, there's something wrong there. I already have a lot of insulin. Well, yeah, but you need more. It's not working. Well, okay. So that's why we talk about a totally different way, totally different. You got to get the sugar down to let the insulin go down. And so we put you on phase 1. Phase 1 of the program is really simple. Don't eat sugar. If you don't eat sugar, how is your blood sugar going to go up? It's not going to go up because you're not eating it. And then when it doesn't go up, then the insulin can go down and your insulin sensitivity can get better.
We talk a lot about the diabetes solution kit, and actually I'm going to take this blur off of the blur off the back of my camera so you guys can actually see this a little bit better. But here's the diabetes solution kit, and we talk about this a lot. So it's a low carb, kind of a keto style plan, but there's a lot of other information in here that you're really going to want to get. Is this the solution for type 1, 2, and 3?
Oh, good question. Well, it might be. It's not the only solution. We chose this because it was the easiest to follow. It was a simple way of doing it. All you have to know is how many carbs you're eating in a day, and everything else is so it doesn't require a whole lot of information and knowledge and understanding, and you don't have to go to school to do this program. It's really simple. So that's why we chose this. But there are other ways you can do. We talked a little bit about, somebody asked a question about type 1, and many people with type 1 want to have as low or as high insulin sensitivity as possible. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, they're better off on a low-fat diet, which is they can eat fruits and vegetables and even grains and breads and cereals, but they have no fat in their diet. And so they don't get insulin resistant because it's fat that makes you insulin resistant.
Yeah. All right. If you are interested in checking this out, bartonwebinar.com, I did post that in the chat. You will find a link to this. Now you can get this immediately in a PDF format. So it'll download to your computer or whatever you're downloading to, and you can open it and read it there, or you can pay extra and get the print version of this. But it's very inexpensive, a lot cheaper than going to see Dr. Saunders in person. But anyway,
you get what you pay for.
In fact, that is a question that Eric had asked. I got an email from Eric really wanting to find a doctor like Dr. Saunders. This comes up quite often where people want to find a good doctor. What's the best way to do that? What should they Google if they want to find the right doctor?
Look for a functional medicine doctor. Most functional medicine doctors are looking for the root cause of why things happen, and they're very familiar, especially with type 2, type 1, type 2, the differences between them and how to handle that. And so functional medicine is, I think, the best.
Okay. What does functional medicine really mean?
Restoring function. So instead of like treating a symptom, you look at what's wrong, what's the problem. So just like we were talking about, if you have type 1, you have a lack of insulin. So what's the problem? Lack of insulin. So what do? Well, you look at the pancreas and see, do you have autoimmune pancreatitis causing the lack of insulin? Then you put them on an autoimmune protocol. so that they can get their beta cells working again, and the insulin comes back and they don't have type 1 diabetes anymore. It's just restoring function.
Okay. People are always, not always, but some people are shocked that they go to the medical doctors and are prescribed medicine. But that's what medical doctors typically do, is they prescribe medicine. That's what they specialize in. And so there are other options. And I just appreciate Dr. Saunders being someone who is in the medical field and decided he wanted to keep learning more and finding the problems before he prescribes things. So I just really appreciate that. Lots of questions already coming in. So this is good. Post those in the Q&A. Facebook, I will do my best to check those as well. Debbie said, I've been doing a 24-hour fast for the last 7 days and have noticed that my skin has been itching. Is that normal?
Well, itching is one of those really difficult. It's so many possibilities, from allergies to histamine intolerance to the weather outside, and dry skin can get itchy just because you're not getting as much, fats or fluids or whatever. So, well, yeah, I mean, if you've noticed that's what it comes from, then there's probably a good reason. But no, I don't see that a lot in people who fast, and I have a lot of people fast.
So some form of a detox. You don't think anything could come out through the skin?
Yeah, that's possible. It does. Like people that have liver issues, they often get itching.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
They don't detox well.
Okay. Let's see. Connie says, out of your supplements, what would be a good combination to take to cleanse the liver, the pancreas, etc., so the process can work much better?
Okay. So let's talk about liver cleanse. Supplements don't cleanse your liver. So putting things in is not cleansing. It's actually taking things out. It's the same thing if you wash anything out. You're taking out all of the stuff that's not supposed to be there. That's what cleansing is. So rather than looking at a cleanse in terms of, oh, I need to, drink this special drink or take these supplements or whatever for a cleanse, look at a cleanse for what it really is. And that is, what are you going to take out? And the best thing to do is, like the last person said, fasting 24 hours, or fasting for 3 days, or people do a cleanse for 30 days is a common cleanse back before modern medicine told us not to do a cleanse. So cleanse is very good for the liver, the pancreas, and all that. But doing it by taking out everything that you're eating.
Okay. Debbie said, I saw my diabetes doctor last month and asked her about my fatty liver, and she looked at me and said she didn't know anything about the liver. I was shocked.
Yeah. And fatty liver is one of those things that shows up commonly in type 2. Mostly it comes from fructose. Fructose is a sugar it's not glucose, and it doesn't cause your, it doesn't raise your blood sugar levels, because blood sugar is glucose. Fructose is used almost like a fat. It goes into the Krebs cycle in a different way. And it creates fatty liver when you get toxic on fructose. So the phase 1 of our program is a great way to get rid of fatty liver.
Okay. Good stuff. All right. Chad says 10-year elevated sugar, 2 metformin per day, 1
rosuvastatin.
Statin. I mean, it's a statin. That's what I know. Yeah. Okay, a day. I'm not doing Ozempic yet, as I want off drugs. I bought your blood program and doing Synachroma. I just got a continuous glucose monitor, and I seem to control during the day. Okay, with diet. Okay.
Wow, continuous glucose monitor, good. So you're controlled during the day. That's good. Rosuvastatin is something that will lower your cholesterol and block your production of coenzyme Q10 and testosterone and estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, all of the steroid hormones. So consider that when you're looking at getting off of that and talking to your doctor about that.
Okay. Good question here. Anonymous says, I have your diabetes and heart kits. I'm also taking your heart, fiber, and synachroma vitamins. I also started 2 meals a day. What is the best time to take the vitamins, please?
Oh, good. Thank you. Take your vitamins with meals. Consider them to be food, and they're better absorbed mostly if they're taken with meals. So things like, the synachroma has vitamin D and vitamin K, which are better absorbed if you have some fat in your with a meal. So instead of taking it on an empty stomach.
Okay. Brian says, what do you take to break down that brain membrane barrier?
The blood-brain barrier. You need a blood-brain barrier. It protects your brain from all the crap that goes into your blood and everything that you're eating that's literally getting from your intestines, gets into your blood, and your brain is protected, right? So that's really important. So the real question is, how do you increase the glucose transport proteins when you have type 2? Okay, good question. A study done on rats who had diabetes. What they did is they measured the number of glucose transport proteins in the blood-brain barrier, and then they gave them insulin and got their blood sugar down low, like it was 40, and their blood sugar was really low, 40. And for 3 days, they laid around and were just miserable rats. And after the third day, the fourth day, they were up running around on the treadmill and doing all the ratty things that they do. And so they did a biopsy of their blood-brain barrier, and they had 10 times the number of glucose transport proteins. So that's what you want, is to get the glucose transport proteins into so that you can get sugar in your brain. So like, why does the ketogenic diet work? And one of the reasons we chose this is because you want ketones, because ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier and they don't need transport proteins. They go right through. And your brain can use it, or most of your brain can use it for energy. So some people who have like total dementia, they take like coconut oil. Coconut oil is made into ketones, and they perk up and they're like, wow, I feel normal. And it's just because they're lacking those glucose transport proteins, and the ketones don't need them. So the ketones put right in, so you get energy to your brain all of a sudden that you haven't had in a long time. And it's like, wow, this is great. So that's one of the reasons phase 1 is a ketogenic diet. That's one of the reasons we chose that. So the answer to your question though is, how do you get your blood-brain barrier to be normal, to protect your brain, but not cause any or prevent the sugar from getting through? And that is like fasting periodically and getting your blood sugar down, getting your insulin resistance as low as possible. That's the best way.
We have a really good question from Suzanne. She was recently diagnosed with type 2, and she's having to check her numbers 3 times a day. What do these numbers mean that I get?
What do they mean?
What do the numbers mean that she's checking? She's checking her numbers 3 times a day. What is it telling her? What are her numbers telling her?
Well, they're telling you what your blood sugar, what your current glucose is in your blood. So normally blood glucose has a range, and it stays within, from 70 to 90. Right after you eat, it can go up around 100, but it pretty quickly comes down between 70 and 90. It stays in that range all the time. Or if you're in Canada, it's between 4 and 5, 4 point something is usually where it is. So what it means is, if it's above that, it means your glucose is going too high. And if it's going below that, then it can get too low too, if you're getting too low.
Good question. We do have, let's see, somebody else asked a question about that. I've had, I think, 3 different questions asking about this. And so this is another one of those that comes up on every webinar. Why are my numbers higher in the morning?
Okay, there's several reasons for that. Part of it could be that as the blood sugar drops down, the pancreas stops making insulin and starts making something called glucagon. Glucagon is a hormone that tells your liver to make more sugar. There's a word for it, gluconeogenesis, generating new sugar. So your liver is actually pumping sugar, glucose into your blood to raise your blood sugar. And so that's what it does. So sometimes that happens. And the other issue is that in the morning, somewhere around 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, our cortisol level peaks. Cortisol makes you resistant to insulin, so your glucose doesn't go into the cells easily. And so you actually have higher glucose in the morning because the cortisol is high. So there's more than one reason for that.
Okay, so hopefully that answered your question, Eric. I asked another one of yours earlier. Here's a specific one from Chad regarding that. So he was fasting from 9 to 12 at night and still had the sugar readings that just kept going up and up. You know what? One thing that we don't know is if you ate any time before 11 a.m. there, Chad. I'm just curious if that would make a difference. I'm sure.
He said he was fasting.
Well, fasting from 9 at night until 12 the next day. Okay, now I'm getting it. Yeah, so same thing. That's a long fast.
Yeah, from 9 at night. Yeah,
Till
because
12.
yeah, right. So what's the question?
Just the same thing. What's causing it? Why are his numbers going up from 120 in the morning, and then they go up to 170 by 11 a.m. and he still hasn't eaten?
Yeah, that's most likely due to the cortisol, the insulin resistance from your normal circadian rhythm. In the morning, you make your cortisol, and then it drops down by nighttime.
Okay. Great question from Melinda. My doctors won't even do a C-peptide test for me. I've asked 3 times. They also want me to stay on Jardiance. It's supposed to be good for my heart and kidneys. What do you think?
Yeah, I know the company has marketed it in that way because that's really just marketing. So the way you handle this is to take your life into your hands and really say, what do I need? Consider your doctors as experts, yes, but advisors. So if you have 10 advisors and they all advise you different things, you have to choose what advice you're going to take from all those 10 different advisors. So look at where you are and where you want to be, and then say, how do I get to where I want to be? So you evaluate your life, and then you talk to your doctors and say, can you help me get here? And then the doctor says, no, I can't help you get there. Then you need a different advisor. And that's the way to look at it. You need help from somebody else. If you just want to do a C-peptide test, you can actually do them. Most states have, you can walk into a lab and get tests done. And there is online now, they'll send you a test kit where you can have any test. I think it's called anytest.com, something like that. Wow. Where they'll send you a test kit. You can get your blood drawn from a phlebotomist locally, and then send it in, and they'll give you your number. So you can get the number in another way, perhaps. But if you have a goal and you say, this is my goal, then you ask your advisor, can you get me to that goal? And they say no, then you need somebody else.
Yeah. I just got a note here from Martin that said I almost died 2 weeks ago due to Jardiance. I was in the ICU for 3 days and then another 6 days in the hospital. Yeah. Terrible. And I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. Did they tell you that was why? I'm just curious if they said that it was from that or not. But anyway, let's see. I know I have more questions here. Let me think. Let's see. I saw my doctor last month and, oh no, I already did that one. I'm not familiar with this. Is IR related to the omega-6-3 ratio?
Insulin resistance
Oh,
related
IR.
to
Okay.
yeah. Is it the ratio? Oh, that's interesting. That might have something to do with it, because I know of some research on that where they add in omega-3 oils and the insulin resistance drops down. So that is really interesting. We've been talking a little bit about how oil makes you insulin resistant. And yet I think that ratio might have something to do with it, because I know there's some research on that with cod liver oil, how the omega-3 oils do decrease insulin resistance.
Okay.
So the ratio, perhaps.
All right. I just realized a profound truth about your phase 1 program, Connie said. There's nothing wrong with the program if you don't work the program yourself.
If you don't do it, it doesn't work. That's funny.
You know, it is very interesting, because there was a while, I think, where our customer support team, we have a lot of customer support people that take questions and emails from people. And at one point, I remember them asking customers, people would say, I want my money back. This didn't work for me. And be like, okay, did you do it or did you read it? Very few. So that's what happens. But we've had a lot of people who have had great success with this. And it's just interesting to me. So good job, Connie. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. I already did that one. Oh, Connie says to ask your GP for a referral to a diabetic doctor. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to eat only one meal a day. I eat a juice blend and then one meal. Is that working for you, Connie? Juice can sometimes have a lot of sugar in it, but depends on where you're at too, and what phase you're in and how your body responds. So, all right, let's keep going. So many questions.
Just can I just say something about that for Connie? Yeah. One of the things we were just talking about, how, is this the only way? Does it work for type 1, type 2, type 3 diabetes? But it's not the only way. So our program is a ketogenic diet. It is a way of quickly getting insulin resistance down and allowing your cells to use up the sugar. And it's a detox essentially from carbs, right? And another way is fasting. You can detox. We talked about liver detox a minute ago. You can detox by not eating, if you're not taking in any food at all, then you're also detoxing. So, or if you find some amalgam of that, like in the morning, you eat breakfast, and then you don't eat, you just eat one meal a day. That's a detox. So it's not that there's only one way to do it. It's that that we've chosen a way that people can still eat and detox and get better from their diabetes.
Yes. Here's a great question from Anonymous. What is the best time to eat 2 meals per day?
Okay, clearly breakfast and lunch, skip dinner. Clearly. I mean, there's a lot of research on this. And eating at night is a problem because it prevents you from getting human growth hormones, so you don't repair your body. You don't repair. All the repair mechanisms are shut off when you eat before you go to bed. So having an empty stomach at night when you go to bed and being hungry when you go to bed is actually really good for you. So if you eat 1 meal a day, breakfast. If you eat 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch.
I also just saw something yesterday talking about how we often eat way more at night, very small amounts in the morning, just we're kind of eating Prince and Pauper backward, I guess is what they say. But when at night we typically eat and then we just sit around, and then your stomach has a really hard time getting through all that food. And so it was just another, I was thinking about you, Dr. Saunders. I said, oh, this is just another reason that we need to do the 6-10 reset and we need to learn these things. So if you guys are not familiar with his talks on fasting or what's happening in the body when you're going to bed without food, he has a lot of webinars on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check those out. bartonwebinar.com. There's a link to the YouTube channel. What episode did I say this was? 183?
Yeah.
This is 183. So there are a few episodes. So you'll be able to search through some pretty good stuff. Here's a good question from John. How long does it take for your stomach to be empty after a meal?
Good question. Okay. The stomach empties according to calories. It's not just calories, but essentially calories. So as it's emptying, if you eat something like pizza, like let's say you eat like a half of pizza and drink a pint of beer, that's like pure calories. There's nothing else in it. There's no fiber, there's no nutrients. It's just calories, fat, carbohydrates, protein, and nothing else. Then what happens is it takes a long time for that to empty. And it could be 6 or 8 hours to empty a large amount of like something like pizza or lasagna or something out of your stomach. Whereas if you have a salad that has, vinegar dressing without any oil, and you don't have any meat on it or anything, then that'll take, an hour or two to empty out of your stomach. So it's highly variable depending on what you eat. Average, so the Sachin Panda that did the research on circadian rhythm figures it takes about 4 hours for an average meal to empty out of the stomach. So if you're done eating by 6, then your stomach should be empty by 10, at which time you'll go to bed hungry with an empty stomach because you're making ghrelin, the hunger hormone that releases the human growth hormone that repairs all your body and everything. So that's why we call it the 6-10 reset. Stop eating by 6, go to bed by 10.
Judy says, thank you for what you're doing. I've tried to get answers from 2 doctors to explain what type 2 diabetes is doing in my body. You explained it to me so I can understand it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Cool.
Same. I didn't understand it until Dr. Saunders had to give me, if you haven't heard the sink analogy, that's another really good one. So go find one of those, type on the YouTube channel, type in kitchen sink, or I think that's what I put it under, kitchen sink, and you'll hear his analogy for those. Turn off the water.
Kitchen sink.
Yeah, so good. We talk about it a lot and we'll talk about it again, but yeah, he does such a good job. Let's see here. Another really common question. But this one specifically, why are we against diet soda? Jeffrey says, I'm addicted, but I've reduced my consumption.
Okay. So all the artificial sweeteners are sweet for a reason. They stimulate a certain receptor, a sweet receptor. And on your tongue, it's like on the back of your tongue. And so when you swallow and you taste that sweet, that actually gives you dopamine and it makes you feel good. And it gives you a reward, and that's great. And so sugar is a great way to get that, but it's not the only way. You have artificial sweeteners that do that too. And so that addiction is a very common thing. They call it addiction. It's just, you like it, right? I don't know if you call that addiction. So the problem is, though, that those receptors are also found throughout your intestines. They're not just on your tongue. So when the food goes into your stomach, the sweet receptors are telling something. When they go into your duodenum, then your pancreas is saying, hey, there's sugar there. We're going to need some more insulin. And it puts out more insulin. And so some of these, they stimulate the sweet receptors more than anything else, like saccharin, I think, is 300 times sweeter than sugar. Aspartame is a couple hundred times sweeter than sugar. There's one that's over 1,000 times sweeter than sugar, gram for gram. So these tiny amounts are very stimulating to those receptors. And so the pancreas is saying, oh my gosh, there's a lot of sugar here, and puts out a whole bunch more insulin. Well, what does insulin do? It tells you to put on fat. So it makes you fat. And in fact, when they did research on diet sodas, every single study done comparing diet sodas to sugar sodas, you gain more weight by far, almost twice as much with the diet sodas as you do with the sugar sodas. So you're better off drinking a sugar soda than a diet soda, but we don't recommend either one.
Yes. Not to mention all of the things that are coming out about the artificial sweeteners, what they're doing to your brain or your gut health or all of that. I mean, there's a lot out there about what they do. There are some people, I have a friend who, if she has any like most diet sodas, it's like her brain stops working. It's very interesting. So I know it is scary. Okay, so many good questions are coming in today. Okay, Marcia says with all this talk about higher readings in the morning due to cortisol and gluconeogenesis, I understand now why it happens, but my question is it a bad thing? Is it hurting my progress?
Oh, great question. Thank you. That is the perfect follow-up question for that, because it's not a bad thing per se, but it is an indicator that you're still resistant to insulin. So it's telling you something, and what it's telling you is that you're resistant to insulin. So that's why we say you stay on the phase 1 until you are in the 70 to 90 range in the morning. So we don't recommend necessarily that you have to check your finger stick glucose all day long after every meal or whatever. Really, if you just do the one once a day, do the morning one before you eat, and if it's still up in the 110s and 120s, then that is an indicator that you're still insulin resistant. Thank you. That is a good question.
And Eric, that is an answer to your question as well, because I know you asked something similar down below. Let's see. Connie says, when fasting, do I fast everything, including prescription meds as well? So just scares me some.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a difficult thing, because when you're fasting, your blood sugar is going to drop down because you're not taking in any sugar, right? So if you're taking medications, especially insulin, but any of the other medications, you could get hypoglycemic and feel really bad. So that's a difficult thing to deal with. And for my patients, when they come in, because as a medical doctor, I can advise them on this, I tell them don't take any blood sugar medications when you're fasting, so that you don't get so hypoglycemic. The other thing that happens when you're fasting is your blood pressure will go down. So if you're on a lot of blood pressure medications, or even one blood pressure medications, you can get low blood pressure and get dizziness, like when you stand up, passing out. I've had people pass out when they're fasting. When they're fasting, even if they're not on blood pressure medications. So I also tell my patients not to take blood pressure medications when they're fasting.
We have a question here that says, can fasting help block a leaking heart valve?
Oh, that is a really interesting question. So leaking heart valves, it depends on the reason for the leaking heart valves. But some valves they just leak, and it's a matter of the anatomy and the function and all that. But there is one valve called the mitral valve. The mitral valve it's a valve. It opens to let the blood into the ventricle, and then as the ventricle contracts, it closes, and it has a little wire hanging to it that stops it from going up and leaking back into the lungs. But that little wire that holds it is tied to muscle. And so if your muscle isn't working very well, you get a mitral valve prolapse, it's called, or leaking mitral valve, pretty easily, because it's not that wire isn't firmly attached to the muscle, or the muscle isn't pulling as the heart contracts. It's not pulling and holding that mitral valve in place. So in some cases, you can actually fix the mitral valve leaking prolapse by increasing the strength of your heart muscle. And that would be more like working out, not a cardio type of workout, although that does help somewhat, but a weight training or heavy lifting or muscle building type of exercise also builds your heart in the same way.
Okay. Okay, so we have had this question come up a couple of times. We had an email that went out about our peanuts and rum. I have to be careful. I've done that a few times. So, but anyway, Criselda said she's not a drinker. Suddenly she contracted COVID and I didn't get it as bad as my husband did. Praise God. I believe that taking all of your products has kept me from falling over. Would we recommend that after she gets over COVID, should she try the rum thing? She's 63 years old. She has type 2. And my question would be, have you tried the diabetes solution kit? Would be what I would want to know first. And I'm going to say Dr. Saunders is going to recommend that first probably as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's where you need to focus. Yeah, that would be the recommendation for that. Let me see here. I think I missed something else. Oh, no, that was something else. Okay, Susan said this morning, my fasting blood sugar reading was 208. I had breakfast, then I ate lunch, and it's now 144. I've been doing phase 1 for 27 days, and my weight is still the same. How can I get my weight down while I'm insulin resistant?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So that is an indication definitely of insulin resistance. And 27 days. And if you've been eating only 20-gram carbohydrates, the next step is to lower the fat and decrease the fat and increase the fiber. So the way you decrease the fat and increase the fiber is to go on the section that has the free foods, the ones that you can eat as much as you want, that you don't count the carbs, like the broccoli and lettuce.
It's the fun page.
The fun, yeah. So you go on that and you just eat all of those foods and avoid things that have fat in them. And what you'll find is the insulin resistance will drop down pretty dramatically.
I had a friend who was trying to lose weight and she was doing a low carb diet, and she had kind of gotten to the point where she was just in a rut where she was eating a lot of nuts and cheese. And then she stopped losing weight completely. And once she switched that and stopped eating those two things and focused on other foods, the weight came off really quickly. So I think sometimes that happens too, especially fats. You can kind of stall out after a little while, from what I have seen with some people. So let's see. This is a really interesting question. Roy said, the CT scan people gave me an injection to make the image better. Should I skip my iodine for the next few days?
Yeah, skip your iodine. It's not going to be that much. And the iodine is mostly secreted by the kidneys, and the type of iodine that they use is not something that your body can use. But protecting your kidneys, and just drink water, flush it out. By 24 hours, it's pretty much all gone anyway. So then you can start your iodine again. Can I say something about fat?
Yeah.
I want to say something about fat. Okay. So when we say the word fat, metabolically, and this isn't true necessarily all the time, but when we're talking about metabolism and nutrition, the word fat means any kind of lipid, which means oils, fats and oils of all kinds. So even like cholesterol is not, it is a lipid. So the word fat, people often think, well, I'm not having any fat, because they think of fat as what you cut off your steak, that the part that you push aside, and that olive oil is not fat. No, olive oil is fat, coconut oil is fat, sesame oil, that's all fat. Oils are fats.
Good to know. Okay. 10 minutes. I only have 10 minutes. Debbie says, how long can you fast?
How long can you fast? Okay. So here's a reasonable way to look at that. A person will lose about 1 pound a day ish, little less, usually about 0.8 pounds a day, almost a pound a day. So I've had people fast 30 days on water only and lose about 30 pounds. And I've seen that over and over again. It's pretty much people fast for 3 days and they lose 5 pounds. And they're like, wow, I lost 5 pounds. And they don't realize that the first several pounds you lose, maybe 4 pounds, is water, because when you're fasting, you're not making all the metabolic water like you used to. So it's water at first. And so if you fast long term, it'll average out to a little less than a pound a day. So how long can you fast? Well, there was a man in Scotland in 1968 who weighed 480 pounds. And he said, I am not going to eat a single calorie until I weigh 180 pounds. So 300 pounds. How long did it take him? Well, from my estimation, it would have been, like I told you, maybe 300 days, right? Well, it took him 1 year and 18 days. And he holds the record for the longest fast. But it's not official. Even though he did go to his doctor back and forth, because nobody was watching him the whole time. He might have eaten something. So anyway, so the point is that you can fast for as long as it's reasonable. So I usually tell people fast as long as until you get to your ideal body weight. So the way the guy in Scotland did it was probably about right. And he fasted for a long time. He was drinking black tea because he's from Scotland, right? And he was drinking water, and then he took a vitamin pill. So it wasn't, but he just wasn't eating any calories. And that's probably a good way to do it, is to fast until the longest fast you should do is I'm going to fast until I reach my ideal body weight. That's reasonable. And if you're already at your ideal body weight, then I don't recommend more than 3 days. That's what I usually do, 3 days, although I've done 7 days, 14 days with broth. So it just depends on how you do it.
Roy he says, celebrate with me. I've started fasting 3 days a week and eating only 2 meals a day when I'm not fasting. And I've gone from 300 pounds down to 289 this morning.
Woohoo! I am celebrating. That's awesome. Good work.
It is awesome. So good. I'm going to send that to our team, Roy. They like to know these updates and hear how everyone's doing. You did mention coffee, and Butch, who I got to meet, virtually, asked, can coffee cause a spike in levels?
Maybe indirectly. What's really interesting about coffee? There is no relationship between coffee and any disease. So that there's no like, oh, coffee causes this. Well, some people, when the caffeine, they get jittery or something, and they just don't drink coffee because it makes me jittery. I just can't handle it. In the same sense, the coffee does increase the adrenal output, adrenal hormones, and can increase your insulin resistance and can drive up your blood sugar indirectly from the insulin resistance because of the adrenal glands, but not directly.
All right. Pamela said, I did keto once, but at 3 months, my cravings for complex carbs became unbearable. Why?
Gosh, why? There may be more reasons for that than I would understand. So, for example, when you have high stress, you make more adrenal hormones. Adrenal hormones increase your insulin resistance. Insulin tells your body that you can take in more carbs, and people crave especially carbohydrates when their insulin is high. So that could be a reason. There's the hypothalamus is in charge of that, tells the pituitary gland what to do, tells the adrenal glands what to do. So there's a lot of factors involved. But the answer is, I don't know why you're craving carbs, but maybe you just needed carbohydrates. I've had people do that where I've taken them off a ketogenic diet and changed them to a low-fat diet, like a low-fat, like vegan diet, and they feel much better. But I've had to go the other way too, where people doing a vegan diet for years go, man, I was just craving protein. I would look at meat and go, oh, I'm so hungry, I want some of that. And then they went on the eating more proteins in their diet, and they felt better. So I don't know.
And sometimes you just crave the thing that you're so focused on not having because you're spending so much time thinking about it. I think about that with a lot of things in life. You try not to do something, but you've put all your attention on that. And so that's all you can think about. I'm not saying that's your case. That has happened to me, but that does happen. Great note here from Susan. OMG, I just love this program. I love that Dr. Saunders takes his time to help us all. I've read and reread the Diabetes Solution Kit, and I love these webinars. I always learn something new. Thank you so, so much. I'm adding the 610 and not including any oils and reducing nuts. I'm willing, just not positive what works for my body yet.
Good,
love
good.
it.
Testing, good work. That's awesome. Yes, test everything. Try this, try that, try this, try that. See what works.
I love this note from Rayanne. If my husband doesn't drink coffee in the morning, he would be in jail for murdering someone. He is cranky in the morning until his first cup. Okay, don't take it away. Don't take it away from him. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Let's see. I missed a couple messages. Let's see. All right, let me go back. Dan from Ohio. My doctor gave me a continuous glucose monitor. The last 2 nights, my sugar dropped to 60, then went to 140 2 times during the night. Is this common?
Yes, actually. And some people wake up when it drops low, and they wake up and they don't know why they woke up, but they're actually hypoglycemic.
Wow.
So what happens is the blood sugar drops low, and then the pancreas says, oh no, the sugar's going too low, and releases glucagon, and glucagon tells the liver, hey, make more sugar. So the liver starts pumping sugar into the blood, and your glucose level goes up. That's perfectly normal.
Interesting. Okay. Anonymous says, is it okay to eat 1 meal a day after one had a stroke and heart attack 3 years ago?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question. Okay, so is there anything better that you could do than fasting, than having an empty stomach? I don't know. I'll tell you a story of a patient of mine who came in to see me, and he said he couldn't walk 10 feet without getting chest pain. And they did a coronary calcium score, and he was above the 95th percentile. And his cardiologist told him, if you don't have bypass surgery now, you're going to be dead within a month. There's just no way you're going to survive. And he was having, like literally couldn't exercise or do anything. And he said, I don't want to do that surgery. I know it always causes brain damage, and I know it's not a good long-term solution. What can I do differently? And so we talked about this, and he fasted water only for 30 days. He only drank water. He passed out once, about 14 days into it, but kept going. And at the end of 30 days, he was playing a full tennis match. He was a tennis pro, playing a full tennis match, and then going and working out in the gym. And now 3 years later, he never gets chest pain. So he completely reversed all of those issues that were causing the heart attack and the blood vessel problems. So my question for you then in answer is there anything better that you could do than not eating?
Good stuff. Very good. Johanna says, in the morning, it is easy to just have a Premier protein shake. Says 1 gram of sugar, 25 vitamins and minerals, and 30 grams of protein. Do you think protein shakes are okay?
No. Well, I don't.
She didn't give us a carb count either, but I am familiar with these, and I think they are really low carb. But
yeah. And if they were low protein, they'd be great too, because the protein stimulates the mTOR, increases your risk of cancer. It's really, and then you have to consider that the protein is a processed food too. So all the processed foods are dangerous in some way. So processed fats cause insulin resistance and metabolic problems, and being overweight and all that. Processed proteins cause, or high protein causes the increased mTOR and increases your risk of cancer. And then processed carbohydrates increases diabetes and those issues. So avoiding all of those, avoiding processed fats like concentrated oils, like coconut oil and olive oil and all those oils, and then avoiding concentrated proteins, like especially powders, protein powders, and then avoiding processed carbohydrates like white bread and white flour and all that stuff. I think that's the healthiest way to go. So my answer to your question is, no, I don't think they're very healthy, but I think they could be if they were really high in fiber and lower in protein, if you didn't add any protein powder.
All right. All right. It is our time to let Dr. Saunders go be with his patients. Thank you so much, sir. We will see you next week.
Okay. See you next week.
And guys, come back next week. These webinars are so fun, and I feel like I learn so much every week from Dr. Saunders. Again, if you just can't get enough and you have some more free time today or in the next week and you want to dig into more of these webinars, bartonwebinar.com. That's kind of our hub. That's where you'll find a link to our past webinars so that you can go click on that. It'll take you to our YouTube channel. Yes, all of these are open to whoever, but they do need to register. So if you know somebody who wants to sign up or might be interested, they can go to bartonwebinar.com to sign up for this. And there is the link to the YouTube channel, 183 episodes of Dr. Saunders sharing all of his knowledge and focusing primarily on type 2. So much information, guys, so much good stuff. And you will get to hear a lot of people who are having tremendous success with the diabetes solution kit. And you'll hear their stories. There's a little testimonial channel as well on YouTube that you can watch and hear from some of our friends who are probably on this webinar right now. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but hopefully you can find some of those answers on bartonwebinar.com, because we do have, I think our list of top questions is posted there, and their videos, Dr. Saunders answers them really quickly. What else? Let's see. If you are wanting to purchase the diabetes solution kit or any of our supplements, you can do so bartonwebinar.com, or you can go to bartonnutrition.com, but make sure you use code webinar25 because you'll save 25%, which is a lot when you're buying stuff, right? So webinar25. And I think that's it for me. Come back next week, you guys. Tell a friend and bring your questions. We'll see you soon.